And this is just in from Gateway Pundit, who does such great work. That's thegatewaypundit.com, Jim Hoft. Uh, his title is Disgusting New Hampshire GOP. You have GOP leaders. You may want to fix that, Jim. GOP leaders urge voters to stay away from Trump and Cruz. My title would be like, I'm thinking about this right now. Trumpophobe New Hampshire Rhinos break out anti-Israel Sununu to scare voters from Trump Cruz. Let me read you what Hoft wrote on Monday. Former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu, a Jeb Bush supporter. He's very close with the Bushes, and he was sort of the bad cop, which I respect him for Romney, because Romney was too nice a guy to get down and dirty 4 years ago. Or was it McCain 8 years ago? Told America's Newsroom, if Donald Trump only wins New Hampshire by 12 points, he loses. Says who? I mean, based on what? Sununu is not a Trump supporter. Either is former Senator Judd Gregg. By the way, Jim, you may want to edit that. Neither is former Senator Judd Gregg. Today, the two establishment Republican GOP I don't know what that means. Oh, GOP establishment. I get it. I like that. Leaders urge voters not to vote for Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. Shouldn't they have done this a little bit before today, by the way? Here's what USA Today reported. Two stalwart New Hampshire Republicans, Judd Gregg and John Sununu, say the party needs to coalesce around an alternative to anti-establishment insurgents Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and fifth. By the way, the fact that that's coming out today shows how pathetic the GOP establishment is. I mean, wouldn't a better time to figure that out and break out John Sununu have been before people had actually already started voting in the New Hampshire primary? I guess that in itself tells you enough, all you need to know about the GOP establishment. But going on with what USA Today said, arguing that either Trump or Cruz, USA Today, would be a general, I guess the possibility of them as a ticket, that either Trump and Cruz would be a general election disaster. Gregg and Sununu told a Bloomberg Politics breakfast that the winnowing starts with Tuesday's primary in New Hampshire and should be pretty much done after the South Carolina primary on February 20th. By the way, don't you love how Jeb is so much more electable with getting 3% of the Republican vote than Trump, 30%, and that's not even getting into the amount of black support Trump apparently has. And I imagine there'd be some Hispanics crossing over for Cruz. But anyhow, back to the USA Today article. If 4 people come out of South Carolina, we're headed into a brokered convention, said Gregg, a former governor and senator from New Hampshire who backs Jeb Bush. Says who? What if one of them has 35% of the vote? What if Cruz has 25% of the vote and they get together in a ticket? They seem to be getting along a little better now. Back to the article. Sununu, a former governor of New Hampshire, is neutral in the Republican race except for Trub and Cruz. I think they're both terrible. The nomination of either would lead to a Republican defeat in the fall and loss of control in the U.S. Senate, they said. Gregg and Sununu said the candidates vying for the establishment vote right now are splitting the mainstream GOP voting bloc. Not if you can do math. And by the way, Rubio is very questionably establishment, and Carson clearly is not establishment, and Fiorina clearly is not establishment. And the final paragraph in this is, as quoted, is the longer more Republicans stay in, Sununu said, the more likely, quote, a convention that starts undecided on the identity of the nominee. We shall see. And by the way, I just do want to point out a little bit about Sununu, who is Arab, Lebanese Christian on his father's side, Cuban-born actually, and I think his mother's family is Greek Orthodox Christian, which is pretty similar, I think, religiously to Lebanese Christian. Yeah, but they're not pro-Israel either. One would think they'd be the most gung-ho. If you were an Arab Christian, you'd be all the more pro-Israel, but he's not. And I, among other things, just want to remind you about in 2011, late 2011, he called Gingrich a bigot. Newt Gingrich, who's definitely pro-Israel, a bigot, for pointing out that no one really used the term Palestinian until recently. I'm not going to get into that much. He I think, quoted, the quote was, an invented Palestinian people. And Sununu, who's not exactly the best friend of Israel in the Republican Party, accused him of bigotry, etc. And then he wrote in the Boston Globe, Gingrich's only purpose was to deny any justification for a two-state solution for Middle East peace. We know what side he's on. It's straightforward enough. That's good information about Sununu. And let me just see what's going on in the comment section. This just came out, so not too many comments yet. Someone wrote, bear with me a second here. Yeah, the comments are pretty good here. Fundamentals, screw these old slime bags. We have their number and we know what they are. That's from Fundamentals. Old dog, same old losers. Remember Romney? Bell wrote GOPE. I got to start using that term. Once again, showing just how desperate they are. And Jack BC adds to that, corrupt too. Lipton writes, if you elect one of the GOPE's favorite candidates, does it really matter if the Senate and White House go Democrat? The result would be the same anyhow. The GOP establishment has to go one way or another. Hopefully this will be the election to clean house. Video Savant, these establishment Republicans need to get their heads out of their anuses and fast. Is it ani or anuses? Okay, not the point here. Jack BC also writes, the uniparty protects their own at all costs. Trump in your heart, you know he's going to fundamentally restore America. Then leftists are nuts. TM writes, this clown Sununu along with George Will are useless hacks. And by the way, if you want beyond useless, read what David Brooks wrote about how he misses the Republican David Brooks. Wrote in the New York Times today about, in his column, I miss Barack Obama. It's unbelievable. But it's appropriately pre-Valentine's Day. And then finally, V. Lombardi writes, this is desperation that they are going to lose. They are being held accountable for their mistakes of the past. Amen. And shame on Sununu here. Okay. And this story will be probably pretty relevant in a few hours when we have actual results from New Hampshire.